All right, guys, here we go. We're going to start session 7, the Great Depression. There will be 4 sessions to this lecture. We'll go over the Great Depression, we'll go over FDR, uh, Adolf Hitler, and then I'll have an overview that will kind of cover everything for us. We're not going to go a whole lot over the speech. We know that's coming up. We've talked about that. So, what really caused the Great Depression? Well, there was a series of things: war, debt, inflation, decline in trade. The Great Depression was both in Europe and in America. It is the most severe downturn experienced ever in America, or it was the worst economic downfall ever. We'll talk about the dictators that will rise from this Great Depression, men like Adolf Hitler, Mussolini, Tojo. We will experience unemployment, low production, financial instability, and decline in trade. Now, as we go through our presidents, our 31st president is Herbert Hoover. Herbert Hoover, I can tell you, I do not get a lot of Herbert Hoover papers, not considered one of your more popular presidents. The main thing to remember about Hoover is he did not cause the Depression, but his policies during the 1930s definitely hurt the Depression. Hoover will be a 54-year-old Republican. Kind of interesting, I got here. He's the first president to actually be born west of the Mississippi River. And he had a degree, was very successful before being the president. And he will inherit a very booming economy coming from Calvin Coolidge, but that, however, will not help him. Hoover, like I said, 8 months after being into office, the Great Depression will strike. And Hoover, unfortunately, gets blamed for all of it. And now, one of the things I like to point out about Herbert Hoover, and when we talk about history and how it's relevant to today, is Herbert Hoover, his theory to bring us out of the Great Depression was to increase the tax of the wealthiest. We've heard this before. What he did was he increased tax of the most wealthiest earners from 25% to 63%. He also increased the estate tax were double. Basically, what Herbert Hoover did, guys, was that he taxed the wealthy so much that they ended up, the wealthy was also your business owners. They owned the businesses. He took them out of business. So we know now by taxing the wealthy is not the way to get us out of a recession or a depression. This is a picture of what a Hooverville looked like. Homeless rates were extremely high. After Hoover will leave office, he'll actually be, until Gerald Ford's death, he will be one of the oldest presidents ever. He'll live to be 90 years old. Write a little book called Fun for Fishing and Wash Your Soul. Hoover definitely is a lot like Ulysses S. Grant, as in he was not a very good president, but he was a great humanitarian. This photo here is of Herbert Hoover when he was sent under the Truman administration to go to Germany to help children. And at that time, at the end of World War II, the German children were starving to death. Hoover was sent in as a humanitarian, and because of Herbert Hoover, he saved a lot of little kids. So he was a great humanitarian, was not a good president. These are just different photos, guys, that we have here of the Great Depression. Probably one of the biggest things you see in the Depression was the homelessness rate. You see where all these people here, they're in food lines. There were massive food lines during the Great Depression. A lot of people, guys, were starving to death. The failure of free markets went out. The Dust Bowl will also occur during this time. So it is just a bad time. Now, there were massive runs on banks. If you've ever seen the movie It's a Wonderful Life, that is a run on a bank. That is what a run on the bank looked like. I will tell you that there were entire banks that went under with massive employment, over 25% runs on banks. The economic machine of the United States almost went into the abyss. It was very close to it. Now, we know that we will take a little quiz. For our quiz on this one, I'll point out to you guys, this is something I'm going to ask you. How many banks failed during the Great Depression? 744. How much money was lost? 140 billion. So you will see those when you go over your little test questions. So kind of pay attention to those. Like I said, these are just different photos. We will start this lecture up. We'll pick it back up with FDR. Like I said, this is a 4-part series. The first, we dealt with the beginning of the Great Depression, Herbert Hoover's administration, and we will end it with Franklin Delano Roosevelt once he becomes president. We'll end this lecture.